You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hey everyone, welcome to the Prepared Mind channel. We've got another great special interview here. We've got Glen Tate, and he's with Prepping 2.0. Thank you, Glen, for coming on the show, and I'm on your show, and we're going to be on each other's channel. Now, Glen with Prepping 2.0 is on Patreon, YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, basically all of them, right, Glen?
That's right. Yeah, the podcast and radio stations. We're on several radio stations in Western states. The podcast/radio show is called Prepping 2.0, and the name has meaning. It's the next level of preparedness. We think of Prepping 1.0, which is a necessary and good thing. We're not all high and mighty because we've defined ourselves as the intermediate level, right? We self-designated that. Mm-hmm. Prepping 1.0 is important, and that's having, beans, Band-Aids, and bullets, as you talk about. Right, and then 2.0 is focusing on community and those next steps, a team, water, and comms, and all kinds of things, barter networks, kind of that next level. That's why we picked the name for it. But Prepping 1.0ers get a lot out of it too. So we're there on air.
Okay, yeah, we do the food, water, shelter, clothing, the whole gamut, and then we say you got to be up on current events. You got to know what's going on, and then understand that little world around you, and be prepared, especially in that. So we have similar concepts, and the idea you're shooting for is for community awareness and preparedness.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what it takes. The lone wolf thing just doesn't work. I know you've mentioned that you need trusted, and that's the hard part, right? Vetted, trusted, decent people around you, and you can't do it all on your own. You've got to have 24-hour security, and unless you can go without sleep for weeks or months or conceivably years, right? And I don't do very well when I'm tired. I get a little bit angry, and
I get a little punchy myself. I get a little punchy and
don't make good decisions, right? And that's at a time when you need to be making very clear-headed decisions. Speaking of clear-headed, you were on our show about 1.5 years ago, and you talked about the mental aspect of preparedness. I mean, your show is called The Prepared Mind, after all, right? The mind is the most important asset you have. And so that's one of the things we talk about, but a wide range of topics. We have coming up a food industry CEO who hides his identity and comes on and talks about things he hears on the conference calls with other CEOs. And he has had an amazing ability to predict food shortages. And he doesn't just say, oh, the shelves are going to be empty, because quite honestly, anyone with half a brain knows that would have happened, especially with the pandemic nonsense and the overreaction to it. But he goes into why, and it's fascinating. So it's not just community. We have all kinds of folks. We were on a Swedish preparedness show, and we had him on our show and talked about differences and similarities between Sweden and the U.S. So I mean, it covers a wide variety of topics, but it keeps coming back to that intermediate level.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. It's amazing. You've got an actual radio show, so people can tune in on their car. You don't have to be on the internet. Have you found that communicating in a variety of different ways has produced a more favorable result for your goal?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have a lot of data on how many folks we reach on radio. It's unlike the number of downloads where you can really track it. But we do get feedback from radio listeners, and they love the variety. And I have to compliment the stations that carry us, because they're taking a bit of a risk. It is not a normal sort of topic for conservative talk radio to have us on. And they keep us on, so we must be doing something right. It's a lot of fun being on terrestrial radio. Yeah, it's
terrestrial.
yeah. That's right.
Back in at Y2K, you remember when we were going from 1999 to year 2000, Y2K, I called Tom Sullivan on KFBK in Sacramento, and got on the show with him there. And this is long before I did, obviously YouTube, but it was well after I had begun preparing, because that's something I started as a teenager. And it was really amazing how I was able to steer the conversation into being prepared with a man who, if anyone knows Tom Sullivan, he also subbed for Rush Limbaugh frequently on his national show. But Tom was an economics guy. He's a stock market guy, but very interesting, well-rounded guy. Had a great conversation. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I was able to reach out and touch thousands of people at one time. And so I've tried carrying that into this broadcasting, and I'm waiting for the day when some syndicated company, Glenn, says, hey, John, we're going to make you a deal. And then I can really reach out some more. But I also like to say, hey, you, and you, everyone, listeners, we're all empowered at this point with the internet and our phones. Use that to help people get prepared. It's important to me. That's the whole point of it.
Well, and we're in a bit of a golden age, even though YouTube, et cetera, censors us and makes us watch what we say, which is unfortunate, but we have to be on the medium that everybody tunes into. It still overall is a pro-liberty situation, because we're getting to talk to so many people so easily. I mean, I watch your show on YouTube. It's just really easy to do, and we're kind of lucky. I mean, it comes with some strings attached, and that's a given, but it's not the old days of typewritten newsletters. That used to be the way to communicate with people. If you had an alternative viewpoint, you might get on conservative talk radio, but you probably wouldn't. And you got to once, and that made a big impression. But we're in a golden age, and I'm of the same mind that you are, which is, let's use the globalists' networks to get our message out while we can. Let's use every single avenue we possibly can, and use their own systems against them. I find personal satisfaction in a Sun Tzu sort of way with that.
Yes, it is. It is the art of war working, and it's interesting watching how they combat us, trying to stop us, silence us, and they step on their own tongue so often, Glenn, and screw up, and they trip over their own feet trying to stop us. They harm themselves. But it is what I consider to be an information war. It's a culture war. It's a psychological war. It's also, I think, a spiritual war. And so I want to kind of switch over to one topic before we address some current events. And that would be, what is driving you personally? What's happened in your life? I know that at one point you were on the West Coast. Now you've relocated, and there's a good story behind there that I think should be inspiring and help people understand and take heart and take action.
You bet. 2021 was an absolutely horrible year for me. It started off in February of 2021 when I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I would note that my colonoscopy was scheduled months in advance of this discovery, and it would have caught it. But when I lived in Washington State, the stupid governor of that state decided to shut down all the hospitals for, quote, elective procedures like colonoscopies and other cancer screenings. I think we will find in the years to come quite a few people that had cancer materialize and unnecessarily, because cancer screenings were not permitted, which is just stupid. Another reason to leave a blue state, which is something else that happened in 2021. I'll get to that.
Good.
So had emergency surgery, chemotherapy. At the same time, by the way, I'm cured of cancer as of now.
Excellent. That is great.
And no, it's phenomenal. I was staring at death, and we'll talk more about what effect that had, because I had a second encounter with death. So I was on chemotherapy at the same time. All this is happening, and I'm completely out of the game. I can't really move. I got so fatigued. It was just horrible. My wife and I, the co-host of Prepping 2.0 and another author of Prepper Fiction, Shelby Gallagher, who wrote a great state. I wrote the 299 Day series about 10 years ago, 10-book series that ended up, it wasn't hard. It ended up predicting a whole bunch of stuff that's happened. But anyway,
Are those available on Amazon through your website, prepping2-o.com?
That's right. There are portals to order the books off of Amazon, which is the easiest way to get them. And the book series is called 299 Days. That's mine, and then A Great State is hers. I'm one of the most fortunate guys in the world to be married to a prepper fiction writer. I mean, and she's hot, so that's like a double bonus.
That's a bonus right there.
Yeah, no, that's.
But I found that fictionalization or make believe to describe modern, postmodern, dystopian reality potentials is an excellent way to cast the mind into that scenario and then say to yourself, what would I do? And then seeing a character make a good decision or a bad decision in that sort of scenario really helps understand, helps the mind grasp the concept. And so these books are fantastic. I'm glad you guys have them and have them available.
Yeah, you're so right about being able to put yourself in a collapse situation. And both she and I wrote our collapse scenarios to be very realistic. They're partial collapses. It's not, a comet strikes and it's cannibalism and all that other kind of stuff. The more dramatic something is, the less likely it is to occur. So I went with medium dramatic, which was an economic, political, and social collapse of the United States. Who saw that coming? Geez. Yeah. And that's why I say I don't claim to be Nostradamus. I don't think I have any amazing gift or anything, because it's just looking at world history and how human beings react. So back to 2021, we decided to relocate from blue Washington. We were luckily in conservative rural Washington state, but still that state is circling the drain. It's off the rails. It's just every single day, it seems like something else bad happens in Washington state. We decided we needed to get to a red state while we could. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic there. I foresee a time when highways will be closed down to domestic refugees, basically. And we had to get, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is I had a good friend here. And we relocated, so we were moving. We have a lot of preps, and we had to get all of that together and get on trucks. I couldn't do any of it. My wife ended up doing all of it, which was stunning. So we're relocating while I'm on chemotherapy. Oh, the fun keeps going. In October of 2020.
While on chemotherapy, you're relocating out of the People's Republic of Washington.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Oh, yeah, we were just getting warmed up for what came in October. In October, I was having a surgery to reverse my ostomy, which is it's a shit bag. When they bypassed my small intestine to do the colon surgery, they had to hook me. I had a bag taped on me that I crapped in, which was horrible. And so getting that surgery to reverse that, the day after my surgery, when I'm completely weakened, as anyone would be after having, pretty major surgery, I test positive for COVID. How awesome is that? Well, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I ended up on a ventilator, and there's a 20% survival rate for a man my age and I'm reasonably healthy. I don't have a ton of comorbidities, but it's still a 20% survival rate. I had to say goodbye to my wife. We had to start talking about life insurance, and she started picking out burial plots. She describes it well. She says she lived in two worlds. She was simultaneously completely focused on getting prayers, which is how I ended up surviving this, and me surviving. She was simultaneously focused on me coming home and on all the necessary things she had to do, like get a burial plot, because when it's a 20% survival rate, odds are you're not coming home. And
it's not great odds. It's not great odds. No.
No.
I'm glad you made it, for one. Do you believe that the prayers and the spiritual side had a profound impact on your will to live and your belief that you could make it? I know a lot of people right now. In fact, we've got Steve, we've got other people on the Prepared Mind Network that have gone through some horrible situations, and they've gotten better, and it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that the prayers are what saved me. I say again, 20% survival rate. You've got to have some outside help. You got to have a tailwind to make it through that. And in the Prepping 2.0 listenership kicked into action. I'm going to start getting emotional. So if my voice cracks, that's what's going on
Cool,
with that.
man. I'll step
It's
in.
not
Yeah.
it's not the internet connection. It's my emotions.
Okay.
And we estimate a couple thousand people praying fervently for me and for Shelby, because she
Mhm.
had a lot she was dealing with too. So it's absolutely why I made it through. It's not because I'm a badass and just a tough guy. That has nothing to do with it. And you mentioned a new attitude when I came out of this. Um, Going into the decision to be put on the ventilator, I actually was so at peace with dying because, and I know this isn't a religious show, but I'm a Christian and I have absolutely no fear of the afterlife. In fact, I look forward to the afterlife. And given how miserable I was because I basically couldn't breathe, it was like being waterboarded before the intubation.
Right.
I was A-OK with going over the Rainbow Bridge. And the only thing stopping me mentally from doing that was the guilt I felt about leaving my wife behind. We have a new place in Montana and we're remodeling it and starting this new life. And then I was gonna just check out. I mean, I don't think so. So I have to admit, and this is the part of the story where I don't look very good. I was fine with dying, and I'm not proud of that. But I never fully came to the conclusion that it was okay to die. I accepted it and I was okay with it, but it was different than me wanting it to happen. Well, I was on the ventilator for 8 days, and they partially woke me up just to sort of test me. And in those 8 days, my attitude changed 180%. I remember yelling, "I want to live." I wanted to make sure, because I had one of those do not resuscitate wristbands on, right? I
Right.
wanted to make sure that there was no miscommunication, that I was revoking my DNR. And
Oh, there you go. Very good.
yeah, so I yelled out, "I want to live," and I just to make sure that the point was made. I saw a doctor out of the corner of my eye, and I said, "If you kill me, I'll kill you." Now, I didn't really have a lot of leverage at this point, I
Right.
could barely move, but and but to your point about everything changing, everything changed. All the little things in life I recognized as little. I also came out of this, and this is the prepping aspect of this. I came out of these two near death experiences with the knowledge that I had that surviving mentality. That's the eye of the tiger, to quote the '80s song, right? I
Yeah.
I wanted to survive, and I'd never been tested like that before. I never had an opportunity to yell out, "I want to live." Well, of course I'm going to live. I mean, you just wake up in the morning and it's a-okay. So that really strengthened me in realizing that when times get tougher than they are, and you're so right. This isn't the collapse is going to happen. We're in the middle of it. We're in the beginning stages of it.
We're still in
It's
the
rolling
beginning.
out and gaining steam, so that I have, some mental toughness. I've never been in the military, but I have a bunch of friends in the special operations community. It's a long story, and one of the greatest honors that one of them, who's a former Green Beret, paid to me. He said, "I knew you'd make it because you've got that survivor's mindset," and I didn't know I had it until it happened. So yeah, 2021 cancer relocation and on a ventilator, and I'm completely healed now and up and at 'em, and I got color back in my face, and I get to do fun things like come on your show.
Well, one, congratulations on beating that, coming through it, developing that that understanding. You've now got the perspective of, I could die. I couldn't care less. In fact, I welcome it, but I want to live because of this thing. I think a lot of Americans that were world citizens, even if you will, as I really believe, Glenn, that we're on a slow descent, and we've been on since they started this cerveza hysteria, I like to call it. But we're going into this slow descent, and I think a lot of people are going to come to that moment where they make a choice. I'm going to choose to just lay down and give over to whatever power or authority, or I'm going to choose to live and fight and survive and win this thing. And I think the Jim Jones juice, I know you're aware of the terms I use to avoid the censorship, right? The Kool-Aid, the magic Kool-Aid that's both safe and effective at quenching your thirst and, taking your life. I think those people that have taken it, they've given in a lot of ways mentally. I don't think it means they're down and out 100%, but they've taken that first step towards giving up. And I'm hoping that they come back with a fury. But for the rest of us who have said no, not gonna, I think a lot of people are waking up to this point, this like a line in the sand, or choosing sides, or maybe they sense the cliff behind them and an onslaught of lemmings coming at us, trying to push us off the cliff with them. Do you get a sense of that moment that you've experienced as something that everyone's going to get to experience in a different, unique, individual way as we get deeper into this shit?
Yeah, absolutely. Shit is getting serious is how I would put it. And the outside circumstances of daily American life are getting tougher and tougher. And everybody, one way or another, it'll happen in different ways with different severities. People will have to recognize that this is not life as normal, and there will be actual, objectively speaking, real life threats to their lives and their happiness and their families. I see crime going out of control. I see gangs. I see absolutely corrupt government being more and more of a problem. We talk about on Prepping 2.0 about the cartelification of America. We see a future. It looks kind of like Mexico. Obviously, it's different for a variety of reasons, but where the government cedes big swaths of territory, cartels run things, and I mean the whole mess that is Mexico and other parts of the world too. So when you're having to grovel to a local warlord, basically to get
That's exactly what I call it, Glenn. The local warlord scenario takeover. Yes, exactly. Cartelification is a great a term as well. But yeah,
when you're groveling to get antibiotics for your kid, and the consequences of not paying back your debt to the warlord, then it's going to become real to a lot of people, and they're going to have these similar choices to make. Am I going to live? Or am I going to try to just work through this system? Or hopefully no one listening to this is going to be in that position because they'll be prepared enough that they have their own antibiotics and their own means of dealing with warlords, to put it very vaguely. And so people are going to get out of their American comfort zone, and they're going to be confronted with this. And it'll be interesting to see how individuals react. That's one of the things, I keep talking about the books, but my books and my wife's books, the reason they're so helpful is you see people and how they react. You nailed it when you said it's about how people react to situations, and you can put yourself in that position and say, how would I do it? That's what matters in all of this is individual mindset and decisions people make. And I think I was being given a gift by God going through all this nastiness, because now I know I've picked sides. I've yelled out, I want to live. And from the bottom of my heart, people use that phrase, or the other phrase they use very casually is, with every fiber of my being, I want a latte. Well, let me tell you something. When I yelled out, I want to live, and when I threatened to kill a doctor, by the way, I apologized afterwards. He was
good man.
That phrase, every fiber of my being, that's how I yelled out that I want to live. It was absolute 100% complete. So yeah, people are going to be having to deal with this in the near future.
Okay. I do want to touch on an anecdotal bit of information, and then kind of pass into the cartelification of America. I don't want to sound negative. I know this is a very negative subject. It brings up a lot of fear in people's minds. The idea of, oh my God, drug cartels, MS-13, running various locales in the country. In Mexico, several years ago, Glenn, and you may remember this, there was a small city or village, if you will, down in Mexico. The people rose up against the cartel in that area and wiped them out. And they ended up taking their guns and protecting themselves. Now, the federal government in Mexico, they've essentially, washed their hands of law and order in many places and allowed the cartels to run, unopposed, if you will. So hearing that, it was like, okay, if even average farming people can say enough of this shit. Up here in America, where we have a lot more guns and a lot more of us are well trained as hunters, marksmen, military, law enforcement, and then good old fashioned patriotic thinking on top of it. I think the cartelification or tribal warlords taking parts of cities or parts of rural areas is going to have an effect, but I also think there's going to be a lot of pushback. And that's where this spirit of I want to live is going to come in, or the spirit of surrender is going to exist. And it's, which do you want to be? How do you choose to live? I choose liberty over my life. Freedom comes first, because without freedom, it's not really my life I'm living anymore. And that's a personal philosophy of mine, Glenn, is if I'm not living the way I want to live, I'm living the way someone else wants me to live. And that's not the life of John. If I want to live, it's not my life. I have a very unique life I've lived, and I want to continue living it.
You bring up a good point about the cartelification, and you mentioned cities and parts of rural areas. I need to say that I view cartelification as very geographically specific. I think that blue cities will be the worst of it by far.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost need a left-wing city with a bunch of scared, weak, entitled people for this to work, this
Right.
cartelification to work. I can see some problems in rural areas where you've got basically the good old boy version of a cartel. I mean, that exists too, but
That
rural,
was my rural version, is the good old boy. My granddaddy owned this, and now I'm the warlord, versus an imported style, say a drug cartel or a military cartel. We have a lot of people in the military who have chosen to join mercenary groups or defense contractors or private operators, and they have no problem just stepping on people's rights. They kind of live that way, unfortunately. Anyways, I didn't mean to walk over the top of your conversation.
No, it's quite all right. It's a conversation. This is how they go. And
it's a great topic, though. It gets me very pissed off.
But the rural areas, I think you're so right. The different kinds of people out here in rural areas would not tolerate it, and we're way better armed and trained. And so I see it as much cartelification is much less of a problem in rural areas. And I'm really glad you brought up the autodefensas is the Spanish term for the self-defense forces that rose up, because I see a lot of that happening, especially in rural areas. And that's why I think that the short and the medium term look pretty bad as far as stuff falling apart. But the long term, in my mind, looks really good if you're in a red area. I can't stress enough the need to relocate. That's another topic on our show that we talk a lot about, is since we've lived it, we understand how important it is to relocate, because if you're caught behind enemy lines, and I mean that in a very literal sense, you don't have the options that you're going to have elsewhere. And you need to take the time and the energy and the money to do this now while you have time, energy, and money. Because again, your options, get fewer and fewer as this goes on. And of course, the blue states and blue cities in particular are going to prevent travel. They're going to want to keep people where they are. They need the tax slaves, among other things, right? They need the worker bees. And also they don't want to lose the best and the brightest. They don't want to lose the remaining entrepreneurial spirit. They want to harness that for their own tax purposes.
Right.
And so it takes a while to relocate. We're still in a rental house, for example.
Hmm.
My business, a law firm, I'm still standing it up. It takes a while to get that going. And so you need to understand that it takes a fair amount of time to fully relocate, and you
Hmm.
need to start now.
Yeah.
And another advantage you have about moving from a blue state to a red state is that for the most part, real estate prices in blue areas are relatively high because all kinds of people want to live for some weird reason in blue cities and blue states. I don't understand, but hey, about half the country is different than you and me. So, okay.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you can get top dollar for your place. Now, when you move to a red area, housing prices are pretty high, in places like Western Montana, that everybody's moving to. It's unbelievable how many people have moved here in the past year. Just in conversations, it's rare for people to have been here their whole lives. There's been such an influx. So housing prices are high, but you're basically selling high and buying high, which kind of washes out. And
Right.
so you got to get on the relocation now. I know it's a big chore, but just think about if the highways are closed and you're trapped in a place like Seattle, how you're going to die a miserable death. Let's just be honest. Let's not sugarcoat this.
There's the odds are higher. There's a lot more problems. Is it just population density and the amount of calories per acre that a city can produce? It's not enough to live on. So that's why, urban or suburban preparation, having a good larder full of food, you better, right, be prepared. It's a mess. Now the relocating thing is just a fascinating topic. You relocated from urban or suburban Washington State, or were you rural there?
Rural.
Okay, so you went rural to rural, but you went to a red state inland. A lot of the country is moving south. New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, they're all moving down as far south as they can afford, because prices are going up in the relocation areas. And as you leave these urban areas, there's fewer and fewer buyers moving into them. So their prices seem to be coming down, and it's going to be a wash at some point. And that's if you have a house to sell with equity in it. Uh, if you owe 95% of your house's value in a blue city, you're not getting a whole lot of cash to go buy something new somewhere else. So take some planning, some thinking, I'm sure. And I'm with you, Glenn, that I recommend getting on that shit if you're going to do it. If not, the other thing is prepare for where you're at. You better understand your area. You better have a plan. You better be prepared. And then the shall we say, martial consequences of being around a lot of people is going to be very difficult mentally to deal with. It's going to be a lot of trouble, in other words. It's going to make the 2020 riots look like recess in kindergarten as far as
Child's
the
play.
amount of violence that can occur.
Yeah, and even in peacetime, there's a relief that comes from being in a red state, because when I was in a blue state, I realized most of the people around me, even in a rural area, because it was a blue state, they were not terribly prepared. They did not have a real self-reliant mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that in a matter of a few dozen hours after order breaks down, these nice rural people are going to be coming to me and demanding stuff. And then of course there are the bad people too, which are even more direct in their
Right.
requests. And I realized that most of the people around me in my blue state would take my stuff and probably kill me. And it doesn't make for a real peaceful coexistence. And now, where I am in rural Montana, nobody thinks that way. The calmness, the peace of mind, and there's this black cloud that hangs over you in a blue state, and you don't realize how pervasive it is until you're in a red state and you can look back and see, and just everything's dark. Nothing works in Washington State. I mentioned that a colonoscopy was indefinitely delayed because of COVID. That's just one little teeny example, and nothing works. It's like East Germany, where just there's nothing in the stores, nothing works, nobody cares. Um, Nobody cares about.
Those are all political decisions made at the top with Governor Inslee and the Democrats. And it's that way in
Absolutely.
every state and every city. It's a political decision over a medical emergency that they've fabricated. So they want it that way. They're intentionally doing that. They're intentionally causing chaos.
Yeah, because the number of votes that Inslee gets from being tough on coronavirus, oops, I shouldn't have said that, cerveza bug, uh, is it's worth it to them to get those votes that he's going to get anyway. I mean, the guy can't get unelected. I mean, he's the governor for life, given the demographics of Washington State. And so in exchange for winning that next election, parentheses, that he's going to win anyway, he's fine with canceling cancer screenings for who knows how many people like me.
Right. Yeah. I was talking with one of our syndicate cohorts, another one, Crispy Bacon. He actually believes that this effort by the globalists is between cerveza bug, the Jim Jones juice, the closing of hospitals, the denial of elective surgery and elective procedures, is a legitimate 100% effort. And I agree with them. That's why I'm putting all the emphasis on this, to reduce the population in aging groups and other groups that they don't particularly want, for the express purpose of saving money, or shall we say, reducing unfunded future liability. That is the health and welfare and care of these people that are being just wiped out because they're not being given health care. And you, my friend, are a prime example of someone who almost lost his life because of this policy decision.
Yeah, you look at what cerveza bug, who it strikes the most, middle-aged guys. I'm in my mid-50s, and then the older ones. And I don't know if it's a specific plan, but I mean by that I mean I don't know. I mean, I'm open to it. I'm not dismissing it politely. I'm saying I'm open to it. However, I can say this: it's remarkably effective. If that were their plan, they're going about it remarkably efficiently. And I'm still on Facebook, and I don't even know why, but I am. And I notice in my feed an incredible increase in the number of people saying, my husband passed, my dad passed, my brother passed, and so many of them, it's coronavirus. It's also, I quit saying that. I'm sorry about that. It's also suicide. It is, and there's a direct link between the closing down of things. See, I'm trying to use neutral terms here.
Right. Yeah. We do our best, man.
But I've just really noticed an increase in the number of deaths of people who are Facebook friends, and they're cleaning out, the bench of people like me who are capable of opposing them.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very effective. So
if I can add, I don't believe in coincidences. I mean, occasionally they happen, but let's see, Governor Cuomo of New York, Governor Pritzker, the governor of New Jersey, whose name escapes me quite often, little turkey.
Murphy, I believe.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. These are an example of the worst governors who sent infected people back into rest home, retirement homes, assisted living homes, elderly care, critical care. And they had an explosion in fatalities as a result of the illness. It's a real illness, I have no doubt. But it seemed to be targeted to a population that would succumb quickly so they could boost numbers and scare people further. And then furthermore, the solution to the problem, the Jim Jones juice and the juice boost that we're all being told is so great. I've been reporting for the past few weeks and months on professional athletes and now teenagers that are falling apart. It's like, these are the people that are going to be strong workers, thinkers. I mean, the future, who's going to be left in the future, right? It's incredible the future they're shaping. And I don't see a happy ending in it at all, because the opposition to it and the fact that what they're doing to their own constituents, it's like, what is this nefarious plan? It must be nefarious. Anyways, it's shit. Where do we go from there? Let me switch gears a little bit with you, Glenn, and go to this topic, because you're an attorney. Trudeau up in Canada, their prime minister, the media up there is now relabeling the concept of freedom as a far right-wing concept. So they're using sophistry or redefining words, and at the same time redefining culture, redefining history, and then redefining the law itself. As an attorney and a patriot, I would like you to speak on this. But just by changing the concept of freedom from the good thing we want to something that's bad, and then labeling it as far right and extreme, where do you see them taking that? Just give me your general thoughts on the topic. I mean, this is one that I think the world needs to get a hold of. Is they're trying to take our traditions and culture and law from us.
Yeah, I think Canada is giving us a great preview. I don't mean a happy preview. They're giving us a very illustrative preview of what the federal government the U.S. federal government could easily do. I noticed that too in my newsfeed this morning, that freedom was described by CBC, which is the state-run media in Canada, as a far-right concept. And the thing that amazes me is that it has to be something that some portion of the population agrees with, or the media probably wouldn't say it. I mean, if they said that little green men are coming out of the exhaust pipes of the Freedom Convoy trucks,
Half the population will believe it, right?
It's ineffective if it's completely silly. So there must be some popular support for this notion that freedom now is a right-wing concept. It should be chilling. I could see them doing a carbon copy here. As far as Canadian law and the direction Canada's going in, we had some Canadian patriots on our show, and we talked about the difference between prepping in Canada and the U.S. And one of the things that the Canadian guys said was, they said a fundamental difference between Canada and the United States is that in Canada, you're a subject of the crown, and in the United States, you're a citizen. And that divide goes very, very deeply. You don't have nearly the same rights. People would be shocked if they knew about Canadian criminal procedure, for example. I have a friend in Canada who, after he put on Facebook that he came to the U.S. and took a shooting class, so it's completely legal. He was in the U.S. He wasn't shooting in Canada. He was possessing a Glock in the United States, which is completely legal. That he got visited, and the police just came into his house. They didn't break the door down, but they didn't have a warrant, and they just came in and searched his house looking for his Glock that he shot in the United States. And so there are all kinds of differences. Canadians don't expect a whole lot of freedom, and they're disarmed. That is a huge factor. I cannot imagine the Canadian government taking the very extraordinary measures they're taking as of yesterday. It's a late breaking story. It's developing as we speak.
Correct.
Taking those sorts of extreme measures, the Emergencies Act, which is kind of like our Patriot Act on steroids. It's more like the NDAA, our version of that in Canada. I can't imagine them doing that if they had a population as armed as the United States and trained as the United States. So Canada is ripe for this oppressiveness. That being said, I don't want to be entirely negative. That truckers convoy has been absolutely breathtakingly awesome. How effective it's been, how they've changed several laws in several provinces, and the popular support. Of course, you only see that on U.S. TV, and that's saying something, because the U.S. media is not exactly covering it well. I'll tell you, in Montana, where we have border crossings that have a lot of economic significance, there are some local news stations covering it pretty closely. And the prospect of an American trucking convoy that's going to start on March 1st. Now, a lot of these trucker strikes and convoys have sort of evaporated and never really taken off, but I think this one is going to. So that'll be interesting. That'll cut off all kinds of supply lines and will cause all kinds of disruptions. And I don't think that's bad. I'm not critical. I mean, having your Doritos, when you want them, just in time inventory is not the be all end all thing in the world. It's freedom. And so I think to close this loop about Canada and the US, I think when the American trucker convoy starts, we're going to start hearing things from the American media and the Biden regime, as I call them, about freedom is a right-wing concept. I could see, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, which surprises people given that, I'm in the prepping world. But I could really see a false flag situation, some so-called truckers doing some bad stuff, and they're not really truckers. They're working for the government. And it's just too easy for the Biden regime to have a boogeyman right when they need him. And there's a cultural aspect to this too. I mean, truckers are, for the most part, and I'm going to generalize, blue collar, conservative, God forbid. Yeah, they listen to country music, God forbid. And, all these stereotypes that a good chunk of blue America despises people like truckers, especially independent mindedness that you mentioned. I could see it being just the ultimate boogeyman. And I'm kind of nervous. I mean, I want an American convoy to happen because it's going to be changing the debate. And it's a classic example of peaceful civil disobedience. I thought the left was all about that. When they were out of power in the 60s and early 70s, they were all about the civil disobedience. And now they're about forced obedience.
It's for them, it is agenda and goal and expediency. The same way standing up for women, it was politically expedient to forget that story and move to, well, this is the Clintons and Bill, and they're in charge now. So it's okay for what Bill did to Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones and all. It's always political expediency. The same way they can, just calling back, they're going to change freedom. What we need are freedoms and our right to free speech, the hippies said. Now they don't want free speech. And there's a limit to free speech. It's always political expedience on their part, as long as they're marching towards their goal. Their goal is to destroy the Constitution. It has been, I think, for a long time. I don't like this concept of, well, it's an evolving document. Well, I would like it to evolve to more freedom, but it doesn't seem to go that way. So it's not a conspiracy theory per se, to say, well, look at this, and if I imagine what comes next, that only comes as conspiracy. I'm seeing a progressive move in one direction that points exactly to where they're actually saying they want to go. They want a socialist America. They want Marxist ideals. They want the suppression of free speech. They want to redefine words to turn the concept of freedom, into a right-wing fascist concept, which is, to me, it's an abomination of intellectual effort to try and to do that. But once again, their population, the Democrat mindset, because there's a chasm between right and left now. They're so far over on the left, they look at us and they can't agree with a thing we say. So then they just look to their leaders who tell them, abandon all logic and thought and just listen to me, because what we told you last week, we're going to tell you the opposite of. And you're going to believe that. And then they do. And it's like, oh my God, it's the zombified robotic morons, these leftists out here that one week say wear a mask and the next week say don't wear a mask because their leader keeps changing their mind. Now freedom is bad. Protesting in 2020, mostly peaceful, was setting cities on fire and burning courthouses and cop cars and burning businesses and looting. That was mostly peaceful. Now, as you've described, the peaceful protesting going on in Canada is looked at as disruptive to the whole economy, the way the government operates. And now it's looking like they're going to call that right-wing authoritarian insurrection, right? They coming from this small radical group, and to add more to that, somehow a truckload of guns was in Canada and it got stolen, a place where they don't allow a whole lot of firearms. So there's 2,000 plus firearms, and the truckers and their rebellious cohorts are saying, hey, look, it's not us. We don't have it. We think we're being set up with a false flag. Once again, not a conspiracy theory, but if you look to history, history demonstrates that these things happen. They're not coincidences. The government's not getting its way, so it creates a scenario by which it can convince the people it's right and its opponents are wrong and bad. Again and again, I'm seeing this play out, Glenn, and it's horrifying that so many people don't even see it. And I'm very grateful to God Almighty that I can, and that I get to come and talk to you and others on this topic and share the information and say, spread it, hit that address bar and send that out to people, because they need to start thinking. They're changing the rules in the middle of the game, and they're taking our points off the scoreboard. And it's pissing me off good. But down here in America, let's see, parents, Glenn, are now domestic terrorists, according to the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and the FBI. What do you make of that?
That was horrifying. You almost couldn't come up with a better example of left-wing exaggeration and projecting. The leftists are very good at projecting, and that's something you talked about when you were on our show, was how the left, and for folks who are unfamiliar with the term, it's when you've got some bad trait like wanting to arrest people, and you then project it onto your opponents and say, oh, those opponents of mine are the ones who want to arrest people. You almost couldn't make up a better example of a harmless group of people than people going to school board meetings. I mean, isn't that the Norman Rockwell direct democracy love affair that we're supposed to have, local government, and you go to the school board meeting? Lord knows the left went to the school board meetings in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and got what they wanted. So it was okay for them. But that was an example that really, I think, woke some people up, because they're the kind of people, apolitical people, and most people in this country, as you know, are apolitical. They just want to go to work and take care of their family and raise their kids, and those are all really good things, by the way. But it struck a lot of them because they were the kind of folks that would go to school board meetings. And you were mentioning something about people on the left. They live in this alternate reality and the divide in this country, and that divide, it's getting worse every day, by the way. That divide is something that directly affects everybody because of the possibility of oppression and civil unrest and all of that. It's something to prep for. And I think that when you can see an example of something that leads to a reason to prep, you can objectively, with your own eyes, see that this country is more and more divided. And it's very logical to see the connection between incredibly deep division in this country and disruptions, let's put it mildly. That's a reason to prep right there. And that should be all the reason you need to prepare, and prepare hard, not just say, I'm going to get 3 days worth of tuna fish, to prep hard. And for all the parts of living that you need to take care of for yourself. So you can see it with your own eyes. And another thing about the deep divide and the zombification of the left, I don't know about you, but sometimes I sit there and I wonder, am I seeing this correctly? I mean, to me, it's so obvious that they're zombies. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just getting it right, or if I'm just completely misreading it. And then that vanishes very quickly when I look around with my rational mind and see the evidence. But it's my point with that is it's very easy for those of us who watch The Prepared Mind to start to wonder if maybe we're the ones that are overreacting. And I'm telling you, you're not. If anything, you're probably underreacting.
That is correct. Yeah. People, I don't think, are moving fast enough, thinking hard enough, and looking at what is actually happening. I think a lot of people are wanting to look back at what used to be normal. We're heading, I think, at breakneck speed into stupidity. And while we say get prepared for yourself, get these items together, right? and we watch macro, we watch the big picture on the prepared mind, and I know you do as well, but it's all going to come back to the micro. For example, we see what's going on nationally with let's use the education system again. We see what's going on nationally, and so then people like you and me and us, all of us here in the networks, our own private social media networks, right, that aren't so private, we take control of a school board. Down there in Florida, they had the citizens, the people said, enough of these left-wing school board members, and they voted them out, voted in conservative, traditional, rational thinking adults to direct the school district. And the school district says, no, the teachers say, we're not going to follow your instructions. We're doing it the way we want. So macro or micro, this divide exists. On a very personal level, we're going to be faced with people who are completely irrational, who don't want to think in a way that's, I don't know, intelligent, based on, conclusions, history, tradition. They want to do their own thing now, these left-wing people, and they're just running so hard into it, Glenn. It's incredible to me. And so I think we keep being given just beautiful examples of what to expect next. Are you prepared? I want people to turn the power off for the weekend and sit around their house and wonder what the hell is going on, right? How do you cook this food? What are we going to do for water? The people outside, they don't have power and water in, thinking about it in their heads. What would they do? What's this neighborhood around me like? If you bought a solar panel, how long does it take to charge? What can you run on that? You better figure that stuff out, because doing that while also worrying about a bunch of idiots while you hear gunshots going off and sirens and people screaming and running down the street with their hair on fire, you're not going to have time to do a lot of these things. But if you practice now, it'll be like second nature, how to operate. If you think about the programs, the plans you have, and you're very aware of them, and you don't have to sit down and think about it too much. You can just deal with that, the day-to-day stuff of surviving an SHTF scenario, rather than, oh shit, what do I do now? And the odds are that other person that's going to be confronting you because there's no food, or they can't get water, or they're pissed off, or they're going to blame you and your neighborhood, your street. They're acting very irrationally, and they're not going to think things through. You have a distinct advantage in that situation, having pre-planned and prepared. It's why I believe being fully prepared, fully planned, and fully practiced is critical, absolutely critical.
One of the points you made when you were on our show was a variant of what you just said, and that is, make these decisions and mentally prepare yourself now in peacetime, because these are huge decisions. And an example of that would be whether you're going to let somebody in to your bug out location or your bug in location, whichever it may be. Start thinking about that now. When you're not hungry, terrified, sleep deprived, and you have all kinds of information now that you may not have in a crisis situation. You may not know everything that's going on. Why not do that now? It's free. It doesn't take a lot of time. You don't need to buy anything, and you need to you need to have a prepared mind. I mean, there's no way around it. You have to have a prepared mind, and you have to do it now. And you have the luxury, and it is a luxury, of doing this mental preparation during peacetime. Take advantage of it. You've been given some advantages. There are some disadvantages because we're in a collapsing empire, and that's a problem. I grant you that that's a problem. But you've also been given some advantages. You've got time to think about things, and you've got the ability to watch YouTube and share YouTube, shows like this. So take advantage of it. You don't have many advantages. You might as well play the hand you've been dealt to the best of your ability.
Right. Time is so critical. How many times have you been doing something and someone's pressuring you, and you're like, give me a minute, just a minute. It's all I need is a minute, right? Or I'll get to it in a minute. The concept of time is something that humans seem to understand pretty well. There's not enough of it. in an emergency situation, Glenn, there's not going to be any time for luxury. It's going to be all how to deal with this stuff. You're not going to be able to tell that jackass coming down the street, give me a minute, right? You better understand your self-defense scenario, how you're going to play it out, where you're going to tell them to stop, way back there, not when they're right in your face. There's going to be a lot. Time is critical. Time is going to be, I think, really critical. So being prepared ahead of time, I think, buys us the time we need, the mental time, to make good quality decisions. And again, you're bringing up sleep deprivation. I can't say enough about good health and good sleep, good rest. If you're so busy trying to catch up in SHTF, a bad scenario happens, a natural emergency, man-made emergency, the more you're exhausted, hungry, tired, thirsty, the poorer quality decisions and less effective you're going to be. And it puts you and others at risk and danger when they shouldn't have to be. So being prepared ahead of time is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, sleep deprivation is a monster. When I was in high school and I was in Civil Air Patrol, which is the Air Force Auxiliary, it's a great organization for troubled youths like myself. And we did an exercise where a weekend-long search and rescue exercise. Basically, I was awake from Friday morning until early Sunday morning. And not only was I awake, I was carrying people in stretchers and exerting myself. Basically, a dress rehearsal for how much sleep you won't have and how much physical activity you will have in a bad situation, a collapse situation. And I remember early Sunday morning sitting by the campfire and looking at a 6-foot rabbit with snarling teeth, which obviously didn't exist, but I was hallucinating.
Right.
I knew it wasn't real, but I could see it. I mean, as I tell the story now, I can see it in my mind's eye. Had a little hat on, like a Tom Petty, top hat. And that really taught me something. What if I wasn't with it enough to know that wasn't true? And this sleep deprivation, and you were in the Marine Corps, so you know about sleep deprivation.
We oftentimes went into deprivation for the purpose of understanding it and trying to function with it. And it is incredibly painful also.
Yeah, and you see the danger. I mean, what if, I attacked that snarling rabbit and it turns out it was my best friend? The stakes are high, and you almost can't emphasize enough how much easier it is to make decisions in peacetime than it is in a collapse setting. And that's why we're here. We're planners. If you're watching this show, you're a planner. You don't just leave things to the wind. And part of your planning, needs to be this mental preparation, the prepared mind.
Yeah. Well, shit. It's I would like to do this again with you, Glenn. I've told everyone, and I know you're aware, that we would like to do interviews once a week, and I want to rotate different people from different, shall we say, expertise levels. But I would love to have you back. We had Rudy last week. I'm going to have Crispy Bacon. I'm going to have the Delaware Patriot on. I'm going to get Mac on. I could reach out to a couple of economists I know, but we'd love to have you back at some point. So please stay in touch. Of course, you've got my personal number and contact information.
And that personal cell phone number is, no, I'm kidding.
Don't do it. But this, again, I know it's you and I talking right now, but there's going to be thousands and thousands watching, whether it's in your network or it's mine. Share this information. There's people that are waking up right now. They want information. They're hungry for it. They're looking out. They're scared. They see bad things, or they're just starting to get a little feeling, or maybe something someone said 2 years ago is just affecting them and they need this information now. We all started somewhere, and so there's people that are starting out and we need to get them on track. There's time. But time, I think, is getting shorter. Once again, time, Glenn. If you have a parting statement or thought, go ahead and throw it out there, man, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I appreciate being on, and that's not just empty guest interview kind of talk. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. In fact, when I got a hold of you to come on our show, I remember when I spoke with you on the phone, and I was hearing your voice on the phone instead of through YouTube, and it was a thrill. One of the things I love about doing Prepping 2.0 and the people I met writing 299 Days book series is that I get to meet all these people that I've been a fan of for a long, long time, and it's just an honor to come on your show, and can't wait to have you on ours. And we can talk some more. We obviously think, exactly alike, which is rare. I'm not used to that. Usually you and I are the kind of people who are outliers, but so no, it's been a tremendous honor. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been a great conversation, and I just really appreciate it.
I do too. I really do it. I'm glad you got a hold of Jolene when you found out we're doing interviews again. And we're going to keep doing this as long as I can, as long as I have a voice. And again, YouTube is the big enchilada platform still. So I try and keep things clean to keep the most information out there. I cast a wide net, bring as many fish on board as we can. But once you get into it, people, they find their niche and what they want to do and focus, but, get all that stuff together. That comes first. And it's incredible having you on, Glen, as well. And I'm so glad you made it, 1, out of Washington, 2, through a health crisis, and are continuing to find your voice as you move through life and this crap we're dealing with, man. It's shocking to me, but at the same time, I guess I would rather have this slow descent into madness than an overnight collapse where the lights are out permanently and we go into some sort of Mad Max scenario everywhere. So at least we're getting a chance to reach more people and say, don't you see what's coming? Maybe you ought to do something.
Exactly. One of the reasons you do what you do and you do this show, same as me, is that it is no exaggeration to say that we are saving lives by getting this information, and particularly the motivation to prepare. Articulating the case for being prepared is going to save lives. And I'm convinced that when we're both in heaven, we're going to get to have conversations with people whose lives were either saved or made much more comfortable because we fired up a computer and put on a headset and started talking and people listened. It's
Right.
a tremendous honor. And that's why we do this.
Right. I hear about it now from people I've met on the street. They're like, it's you. It's like, hey, and then people that have contacted me in other ways. And boy, getting to heaven, that's, that time will come. I've done just about everything there is to do in this life, except see communism breathe its last breath and go away. And I don't even know if that's going to be something that I get to witness. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to do my best to be there for that moment, because I would love to see humanity become free again. We've gone the wrong way for too long, and we're feeling the pain of that. But anyways, thank you again, Glen. Just a tremendous honor having you on and speaking with you again. And I'll come on your show anytime, man. Just let me know.
You betcha.
All right, good buddy. Take care, man. Semper Fi means always faithful. And chance does favor the prepared mind, does it not?
It does.
Okay, Betty. We'll see you soon.